On today's episode of the Utah High School Hoops podcast, I am joined by Bountiful's head coach, Gus Sopena. I hope I said your last name right. This is the Utah High School Hoops podcast. This is the Utah High School Hoops podcast, your source for sometimes informative, but always entertaining coverage of the Utah High School Hoops scene. With your host, Adam Meek. What's up, Coach? Did I get your last name right on the intro?
Yes, sir. How are you, Adam?
All right. I'm doing great. This is going to be a first for the podcast. So I put this out. Let me kind of tease this out for everybody so they know how we got here. So I put out this question on Instagram, like, hey, who should I interview? And I got some recommendations. And Coach G Sop, as it says up here, was one of them. And so I reached out and I was like, hey, you should come on the podcast. It turns out we're recording this the day after I got to watch Bountiful play in a victory over the Judge Memorial Catholic Bulldogs, which was last night in the auxiliary gym for a retro night.
Yeah.
So it was. Yeah, that was.
Yep. Correct.
I was waiting for Gene Hackman to come out, and we needed like the Hoosiers jerseys. That would have been fantastic.
Right. We weren't quite there last night with the retro.
That would have been pretty legit though. If you pulled out some just like old nasty Bountiful. Was it the Bountiful Braves? Is that who they used to be?
Yep. Correct.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
And then became the Red Hawks, right? I got that.
Yeah, the Brave is still a little sensitive here right now. So we sold some old gear last night, and some of the fans were like, hey, we're not Braves anymore, we're Red Hawks. But yeah. Okay. We tried a little bit last night with the retro theme. So
all right, got it. Well, we won't adjudicate the the controversy at Bountiful, I guess. Right. But it was great. It was a cool environment. It was a little bit different. My son actually, who plays for Judge, texted me and he's like, hey, I think I played here for Youngbloods one time. I was like, okay, great. So that was this is the first time I've ever had, like, I watched the opposing coach to the school that my son plays for, and then be like, hey, let's get on and do an interview. But I'm excited for it. So welcome. How many podcasts have you done, Coach?
This will be my second one.
All right.
Yeah.
That's one more than most people normally have done, just so you are.
There you go.
You're aware. Well, Coach, I'd love to hear, I intentionally did not ask you a whole lot about your background or anything, because I love the organic nature of the discovery here at the beginning. So I'd love to just hear a little bit about yourself. Did you grow up in Utah? Is this your first year at Bountiful?
It is. Yes, okay. Sir.
Yeah. So just a little bit about your history. How did you get to this place?
Yeah. So born in South America, hence why I have the name I have and have a Hispanic background. Didn't really grow up there, moved out from South America when I was really little, like 6 months old, pretty much.
Which country? And it's a pretty big
Uruguay.
Country. Okay.
Uruguay. Yep. So ended up moving up to Philadelphia, and that's kind of what I consider home, is Philly. Lived there for most of my life, and then came back from an LDS mission and came out to Utah and tried the BYU route for about a year. It wasn't for me. Did UVU for another year, and then ended up at Southern Utah University in Cedar City, and met my wife there, who was also studying to be a teacher and a coach, just like me. And then, we pretty much started teaching up in Utah County, did our student teaching up in Utah County, and then been up here for the last 10 to 15 years. And the last couple of years I've been at Timpview High School, assistant Izzy Engel over there, which has just been awesome. I've known Izzy for a while. When I got the job at my junior high to teach in Orem, he was the Timpanogos coach at the time. And so he had reached out to me and we touched base. And so long story short, like known him for a long time. And I coached at Mountain View for a couple of years, helped out Andrew Blanchard there, and Nate Carlin. So, and then I also coached at SUU. So I was a student manager my first year at SUU under Roger Reed, and then became kind of an assistant coach, and helped with director of basketball operation roles. And so I did that for 3 years. And yeah, that's a little bit about my coaching and kind of teaching background.
So if Philly is your home, where does Allen Iverson rank as on the best pound for pound basketball player? So not the greatest of all time. We all know this Michael Jordan. Sorry, LeBron
Right.
James. You're a LeBron guy, but I'm like, it's not even a question.
No, I agree.
But pound for pound though, where does AI on? Is AI like one of your favorite players?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. He was for me growing up too. So
yeah, but my favorite player of all time. So one of my favorite memories growing up was I was at the game where he got to cross over Michael Jordan. Oh. So that was an incredible moment that I'm never going to forget. So huge fan of his. I have like 5 or 6 in different styles of his jersey still. Wore the sleeve all the time in high school when he was playing. So yeah, he's by far my favorite player. Wore number 3 in high school. It's like my favorite number because of AI. So yeah, he's by far my favorite player of all time.
That's great. I didn't know that. That's why I like the fun nature of this. So I almost named. So we have 5 kids, and my oldest daughter, her name is Vivian. But there was a moment where we were going to name her Iverson and call her Ivy.
That's awesome.
I just loved watching Allen Iverson play basketball.
Amen.
And it wasn't always pretty, but there was always just like a gritty determination to his game that I felt like he just was like, I just am not going to lose. And, Michael had that same thing. And I don't know. I'm a big Denver Nuggets fan. So I'm from Colorado originally. And the day his first game in Denver, my wife looked at me and she was like, "You're like giddy. Like this is a first date." I'm like, "It is like a first date. I get to watch one of my favorite players wear my team." And Denver never had good things happen ever. Right. So it was
right.
It was awesome. That's cool. So my dad's from Philly. And so I've always kind of had this, like, I've always loved the Colorado teams, but the Eagles, like Randall Cunningham was my favorite quarterback when I was growing up. The Phillies, like, although, like Lenny Dykstra, I've heard he's not doing super hot these days, but that kind of like, there's just kind of always this grittiness to the city that I always sort of loved and I would always kind of root for, even like Aaron McKee and Villanova and Temple. And I don't know, those were just kind of the teams that those are my East Coast, like, cheater teams. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to root for my Colorado teams, but Philly's going to get some love.
Man, I love that, Adam. That's so cool. I love all the names you dropped. Like, yeah, Philly is such a huge part of my personality. I think if you were to ask people, name a couple of things that stick out about Gus and Coach Soap, people would probably say passion. That's probably one of the first 3 things. And I totally get that from the city of Philadelphia. We're famous for booing Santa Claus and doing all those types of things. And so, yeah, that grittiness, that passion, booing our players when they're not playing their hardest, those kind of traits are just totally invested in my body and my mindset, and kind of make up a lot of who I am, actually. So, like, that's cool. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, I loved Randall Cunningham. I used to like Rodney Peete a lot when he was the quarterback for the Eagles. Oh, yeah. Like, Eric Snow was one of my favorite players.
Holly Robinson's husband.
Exactly. Yep. There you go. So,
yeah, that's Reggie White when he was there. I mean, that was Chris Carter. I mean, those are some. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't watch a ton of. I don't have a lot of time to watch NFL football these days, but I've heard the Eagles are okay. They're pretty good, right?
They've been better recently, so they're going through a little bit of a bad, stride right here, right now. But it's all right.
Okay, got it. Well, we'll avoid 2 topics now. I have 2 topics to avoid. Mascots at Bountiful and the Philadelphia Eagles. All right. Well, that's awesome. I love hearing that. Love hearing that introduction. Hey, as I mentioned to you before, we have a wonderful sponsor called Label, and so when we come back with Coach Sopena, right? Sopena, right? Like Pena Boulevard
Yep.
in Denver. Okay.
Yep.
Coach Sopena. We're going to talk about his team this year, which I got to watch a little bit of 5A. Sounds like you've got obviously not just your time with Bountiful this year, but a history with, with schools like Timfew. So talk a little bit about 5A, and then we'll wrap it up. So we'll be right back after this break. Did you know that 89% of consumers say they've stopped buying from a brand after just one bad buying experience? Well, that's where Label comes in. Label Protect is a brand-first, buyer-focused protection solution that's uniquely designed to make shipping issues a thing of the past. Instead of leaving your buying experience to chance, you can give your customers peace of mind at checkout, knowing their orders are 100% covered from loss, theft, damage, and more. And with a 98% claim approval rate, 24-hour resolution time, and best-in-class revenue share, Label reduces customer support overhead, protects your bottom line, increases profits, and most importantly, Label keeps your customers coming back for more. So whether you ship 100 orders a month or 100,000, it's time to make the final mile part of your competitive advantage with Label. lablpx.com, or just click the link down in the show notes. All right, we are back, and we're here with Coach Gus Sopena. So, Coach, this is your first year at Bountiful, as we discussed. When you took the job, I'm guessing you had a little bit of an idea of what the roster was looking like, and so how has that been playing out relative to kind of what you were hoping and expecting for the year?
That's a great question, Adam. I would say it's actually turned out a little bit better than what I originally thought. I knew coming in that the Smith boys, Carson and Charlie, were kind of the foundational pieces of the team. And I wasn't quite sure much about everything else. There was, we have a big, tall center, number 11 right now, Falatau Satuala, who plays in our team, who you saw last night. He was kind of a big question mark for us going into the season. We weren't quite sure if he wanted to pursue basketball again this year. So it was a little hard at first because, Bountiful made a run in 5A football this year to the state title game. And so major props to Coach Freck on that. But so Falatau was a big question mark for us. And then we weren't quite sure what else we had after that. We knew that we had some seniors coming in that didn't really have a ton of varsity experience. And those guys have turned out a little bit better than what I thought as well. Talking specifically about Artie Garcia and Sawyer Crane. And then after that, I think the biggest surprise for me has been Bryson Heath. He's our number one jersey, one of our point guards, shooting guards. You saw him play last night. I think he had 14 last night, and he's been just an extremely great surprise. Like, he's just a natural with the ball in his hands. Anytime, as it happens many times in high school basketball, when the plays break down, you got to have someone that can kind of take advantage of the opportunities and maybe create their own kind of shot. And Bryson's by far one of the best in the team at that. And so I kind of figured he needed to be a day one starter, even though he has really no varsity experience whatsoever as a sophomore or junior. So long answer, it's been much better than what I anticipated coming in.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, and especially with the shot clock, this is what, the second season that the shot clock's been around. I mean, you got to have a guy that when your set's not working and they're taking stuff away, especially as you get into region play and the huddle tapes are out, and you probably had a little bit of an advantage early because maybe people are like, we don't really know what they're going to run. And, now film is out there. It's like, you got to have that kid who can say, you know what, give me the ball. I'm going to go create something here. There's 10 seconds left. We didn't need to, it's always nice to have in Utah, but when you don't have a shot clock, you can kind of keep running your set until somebody on the defense just says, oh my gosh. And they have that moment, and then they get back cut.
Yep. Yeah. So true. Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
That's great. So is it, Um, would you say then it's a not a balanced roster? Like, do you have juniors and seniors primarily that are the contributors? I didn't look at what the classes were of the kids. I saw their numbers and I knew Carson and Charlie. Those were the two guys that I knew. And I
Right.
only knew them through AJ Jackson, who runs the Utah Ballers. Um,
Yep.
when I asked him, I was like, who plays for Bountiful? We're playing them. He said, oh, these two guys are great. So,
Yeah.
but is it mostly juniors and seniors then?
Yeah, probably in our top 8 right now, I would say, yeah, it's mostly juniors and seniors. We're kind of at this. I think most teams are probably kind of going through this. If they're not now, they probably will be really soon. But we're at that stage where, when we have had some difficult times with some losses, we've tried different lineups out and tried to kind of work with different guys. So we're at this tough transition stage where we're trying to kind of figure out those last 3 to 4 guys behind, Falatau and our other big guy, Emerson Gauman, who was the starting quarterback for the football team. We know he's kind of one of our big guys that we're going to rely on. And then after Bryson, Charlie, and Carson, it's kind of up in the air right now. So we've been kind of relying more on the seniors and juniors. But some of those sophomores we have, one of them played last night, ended up guarding Salcedo, I believe, if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
Sorry if I'm not.
No,
And he did a great job on him. So Lincoln Smith is what I'm talking about. So there's some hungry sophomores kind of barking at those juniors and seniors coming for their minutes. So we'll kind of just play a few more region games and kind of see how it goes. But yeah, I would say it's mostly juniors and seniors right now.
Yeah. I think that you said his name is Lincoln Smith.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's a great example. I posted this on Twitter the other day, but since I've started the podcast, I've had some younger players, freshmen and sophomores, reach out to me and say, hey, any suggestions on, how do I get more playing time or how to get the coach's attention? I'm always saying exactly what he did last night, which is I'm like, you're probably not going to, unless you're just an exceptionally talented offensive player, like Dean down at Timpview or
Yeah.
who's the kid up at Bodie up at Davis or, Isaiah at Highland, like unless you're just an exceptionally talented offensive player, the only way you're going to get on the court is if you are an absolute dog defensively. And if you bring a ton of energy on the bench. I'm like,
Amen.
Something else there. But those things it's that Philly stuff, right? It's like, if you can be gritty, if you can be intense, if you can bring energy, coaches love that stuff. And you think coaches just want the AI crossover, the step back threes. It's like, they can't, there's only one ball, kids. And if you're trying to get on the court, you got to go do something. And just like he did last night, he was face guarding Aiden Salcedo the whole time. And in that second half, I think Aiden he had 2 points in the second half.
Yeah, correct.
So yeah, it's a great example of a sophomore. I think he played in the JV game too, didn't he?
He did. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I guess kind of speak to the younger players, not just at Bountiful, but in general, right? Is that about accurate for most coaches? I mean, you've coached in college now. You've been at a few different schools. It seems like that's true regardless. Even if you're a rookie in the NBA, if you're Christian Brown of the Denver Nuggets, if you want to be a contributor on the world championship team, you got to play defense and you got to be you got to be able to knock down shots. Just if you're open, you got to be able to make it, and you have to be a dog on defense.
Yep. Yeah, and defense, like I always tell our teams, is in my opinion all about your attitude and your effort, right? It's all mentality when it comes to the defensive end. There's obviously skill involved, and there's skills that we can coach and teach and try to make better. But at the end of the day, it's all about that mentality, and that's a key thing that we try to teach our guys about. And then to kind of answer your question about like speaking to the younger guys, not just my guys, I would say the same thing I say to our team. One of our we have 3 big C's at our program. We have, communication, compete, and consistency. And compete is like huge. And every drill we do is competitive. We have a winner and a loser in every drill. We talk about how when we lose, we're really just learning. Like those are learning opportunities. It's like after a loss, I'm not going to go in the locker room and yell at the kids. I'm just going to come out and say, okay, what did you learn from this game tonight that we can hopefully improve and get better at next time? And so those are some key aspects, some standards, so to speak, that we have in our culture and our program. And so we just stress competition. And I have told everyone from day one that, not to sound rude or frank, but like, frankly, I don't really care what your last name is, who your dad is, what you did last year. Like, we're coming in here and we're competing. And I don't care if it's a freshman, if it's a junior, if it's a senior or a sophomore, like, we're going to play the best 8 kids that give us the best chance to win and that play the best together, have the best attitude, the best effort, who are relentless in all those areas. And defense is just such a great, equalizer for players. I feel like, if you want to get more minutes, just like you elegantly said just a minute ago, you got to get in there and have that dog mentality and just go play some defense. Right. And if you do that, then you're going to get minutes, because at the end of the day, that's what wins championships, like the old adage says. Right. So yeah, just don't let status, define who you are as a player. Just because you're a freshman or a sophomore doesn't mean you can't contribute in some way, shape, or form to a varsity squad. And I think sometimes, in my experience, again, this is just my opinion, I think if you have an open mind as a head coach and you have that competition, that's what Izzy did at Timpview all the time, and I was always a part of, and just learned so much from that. I think if that's present, then it just makes your team so much better. Competition is just such a great equalizer, kind of see where guys are at mentally, where they're at with their attitudes. And so, yeah, those are things I would say to just focus on, to kind of separate yourself and continue to try to just challenge yourself to maybe see if you can make juniors and seniors ahead of you better, and, get on the court by playing some hard defense. And like you said, knock down a shot when you're open.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to remember the kid. I think he was number 31. He hit a 3 at the end of the third quarter. I think it was the only shot he made. It was a huge shot. I mean, it was like,
it was
big momentum swing. I don't know if he was an underclassman or not, but I was like, wow, is that the same kid that we were talking about?
Yeah, that's the same kid. I was just going to say, that's Lincoln Smith, that sophomore.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was, I mean, we don't have to go through the entire game, but in the moment of the game, it's a 10-point game. It's the end of the third quarter. I think Judge had just missed 2 free throws, so there's a big difference between an 8-point lead going into the fourth, and, maybe kids get a little tight, and then you have a 13-point lead going into the fourth, and there's a little bit more looseness to the team, positively looseness, not just like, oh my gosh, we're so much better, but just like, yeah, we got this. And, those are moments in a game where not only is the kid Lincoln playing great defense, but then he is rewarded because he's trusted by his team to knock down the shot. And I thought that was it was an indication, not only that, but then just the joy that happens afterwards of the culture that you're putting together there in such a short period of time. So
yeah, couldn't agree more. So well said. Sorry.
Oh, thanks. No, it's fine. It's fine. So let's kind of start winding this down here, but I want to talk a little bit about 5A in general. So at the beginning of the year, I did a 5A preview, and I admitted when I started this podcast, I will keep admitting it right now, I am not a Utah high school basketball historian. I coached a 1A basketball team last year, and I had to scout a few 1A basketball teams last year. I was not sitting here breaking down film of, Corner Canyon and Alta and all these teams. So I did the 5A preview, and it seemed like at the beginning of the year, it was kind of like, all right, we've got Alta, and then we have like the next tier of teams that if you catch them on an okay day in the playoffs, which Purdue was a 1 seed, they lost to a 16 seed in Fairleigh Dickinson. This stuff happens all the time in basketball. And if you catch them on that day in the playoffs, you're going to win. I mean, you're going to come away with the upset, and it's not a series. It's you win or you go home. And, Bountiful was in that conversation of kind of like one of those teams that could come out and that could come out and make that happen. So as we're coming in here to, I think you've already played a couple of region games, right? And your region's tough, right? You guys have, you have yourself, is Woods Cross in there as well?
Yep.
Who else is in that region up there?
We got Roy, Northridge, Bonneville, Clearfield.
Yeah, and we've played Roy, we've played Northridge. There's no, just like easy outs in that one, right?
Right.
But how are you kind of feeling going in? Obviously, it's one game at a time, right? You can't really look forward, but I'm going to ask you to do it anyways. As you're looking at the landscape of 5A, and as you kind of pull back a little bit, does it still seem like, has there been either separation, or do you feel like, I mean, we'll find out tonight, Highland plays Alta, that there are some teams that are kind of creeping a little bit closer and closing that gap down? Where are you at, as you're looking at this, or even a team like Timpview, right? Like, there's so many, there seems like there's a bucket of teams that's just like, might get a little nervous if they see these guys. And I would put you guys in that.
Well, I appreciate that, Adam. Yeah, I would say as I look over 5A, I think it doesn't take a genius to know that pretty much the pack leaders are going to be Alto and Olympus, obviously. Well coached, incredible talent, multiple double-digit scores on both teams, guys that you really can't, stop. You can only hope to contain, as they say. So I think, obviously those are the two clear dogs at the front of this pack. And then after that, like you said, I think there's a lot of guys, a lot of teams that are kind of like us and Bountiful, Timpview, Highland. There's just so many, Orem, so many other good 5A teams right now that could upset anybody on any given night. And that's what kind of makes it fun and exciting, especially in our region, like you mentioned. Like, we went into a game just last week against a 1-8 Box Elder team, and they played us tough. And we went into overtime and ended up losing by 2. And that was a tough game. And that's how I feel like it's going to be, like all these games in our region. And so I think it's wide open. And I think that's what's going to make March and February so fun, is to kind of see who can separate who, and anyone can win on any given night, because all of these teams, like you mentioned, that are pretty much like 3 to 15, I would say, they all have key guys who can score the ball. Every team has like a Dean Ruker from Timpview, or Charlie and Carson Smith from Bountiful, and they're all well coached as well. There's some incredible coaches in 5A, and it's just going to make things really, really, really interesting. So we're excited for the opportunity, for the challenge, and we're ready to rock and roll and just not back down and go at it and see if we can give it our best shot.
I have no doubt. I mean, that's the Philly in you, right? So, very, very well said. I agree. I think that the basketball talent across the board in Utah seems to be, I don't know what it's like nationwide. I don't really care, because I
Right.
definitely don't have time to go break down high school basketball nationwide. I can just tell you, it seems like there's just more and more talent coming up here than has been in the past. And in talking with people who've been around the sport for a while in the state, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of really talented teams and players and coaches, young coaches and coaches who have been here for a while. I think tonight, even, like, you got Wasatch Academy plays Dixie. It's like, we've got the Utah prep schools and the Wasatch Academies here that are bringing talent in from all across the country. It's been really cool as an outsider to Utah. We moved here 5 years ago to see it and just to get to know the community. It's a really wonderful community. And if you're into basketball like I am, I tell people this all the time. I mean, I was up at 5:30 in the morning playing basketball in a church with a bunch of guys. I'm like, that happens. It seems like every single morning at every block in the entire state. There's
right.
I mean, of football, baseball, maybe baseball soon might change, but football, baseball, and the NBA, you've got the Jazz. That's it, and
right.
It is a basketball state. I think it's a basketball state, and I think that we're seeing a lot of that. So, I'm really excited. I'm excited to see. I had a prediction. It's probably going to be wrong, but my prediction was that either Dixie or Alta would not win 4A or 5A. That was because they're kind of the clear, like,
I like it.
And I just said, you know what? I feel like one of them is going to slip up. I don't know who.
Right.
And like I said, I'm happy to be wrong. I don't know. I don't have a, I don't care either way, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that was kind of a big thing for us last year. I feel like, not to sound, arrogant, but Timpview, we had success against Alta last year. We ended up beating them once in region and had a close game with them in the state title game. And that was a big thing we talked about, is that it's hard to always be hunted, right? And have people coming after you and having the best effort from every team come after each night that you play games. And, if one of those key guys has a bad shooting night and the game's close, you just never know what can happen. And so that's kind of what our approach was last year when we were going into Alto to kind of try to go win that game. We had lost a close game to them at home last year just by a couple of points. And so we knew going in, like, let's take advantage of this mentality that you were just referring to. And so I love the bold prediction, Adam. That's awesome. Like, I think that's true. I think it's hard to come out as a clear number one seed. And you see it all the time in sports. That's what makes sports so awesome, right? Is that, if you got that dog mentality in you and that number one seed has an off night and it's a close game and they get a little nervous, anything can happen. And that's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Well, Coach, I appreciate you coming on the podcast here. It's been it's been fun because the coaches I've had that I've had on so far are like yourself from Uruguay, Stanyan from Serbia was on, and then I had Coach Stanley from LCA, and he's from the East Coast, so that kind of counts.
There you go.
Right. Yeah, it's been cool to get to know the coaching community here. I'm excited to have a couple of D1 coaches come on and talk about just recruiting in Utah. Got some referees coming on to keep saying this. Parents, stop yelling at referees. It does not help your team at all. It does not help you get calls. Let the coaches talk to the referees and they'll get it figured out. Parents yelling is not helpful. Stop doing it, please, for the love of all things holy. You're not making things easier for your coach.
Amen.
Well, Coach, I appreciate it. I'm going to wrap it up, but don't hang up on the interview. I forgot to tell you that before we get on. Don't hang up.
You're good.
Upload it, and we'll hang out and chat afterwards. But I'll follow you guys on Instagram, right? You got a Bountiful Basketball Instagram that's always popping.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll
give us a follow.
Make sure that link's down there. Everyone go follow the Bountiful Redhawks.
There you go.
There you go. Thanks, Coach. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate you, man.